A Tale of Two Jerseys. New Jersey is a land divided. So divided, even its divisions divide people. Divided further geographically, ecologically, politically, culturally, and even in entertainment. But once this divide was even more real than it is today. New Jersey's history has always been one of divides. The Native American Lenape Nation split their time wintering inland at the bountiful hunting grounds of the Delaware Valley, and would move through the inhospitable pine barrens to summer at the rich coves and inlets of the shore. The first Europeans that claimed territory in New Jersey were the Dutch settlers of Pavonia, today Jersey City, as part of New Netherland operating out of Manhattan, and a little later New Sweden out of what is today Wilmington, Delaware. Though New Netherland was the first of the two, the endeavors were inextricably linked, with many Dutch merchants with experience in the New World and even the former governor of New Netherland going to work for Sweden. The two were rivals in the fur trade. The rivalry ended with Director General Peter Stuyvesant's invasion of New Sweden, though the Lenape took advantage of his absence and dealt a serious blow to the New Netherland colony in the Peachtree War. On September 4th, 1664, 4 English frigates commanded by Colonel Richard Nicolls sailed into New Amsterdam harbor. Peter Stuyvesant wished to fight off the force, but was confronted by a large group of landowners, including his own sons, at his farm. There, Stuyvesant, the merchants, and Dutch West India Company lawyers drew up the Articles of Capitulation. On the 6th of September, 1664, Richard Nicolls became the governor of the province of New York, the personal possession of King Charles II's brother, James, the Duke of York, future King James VII of Scotland and II of England. James, deeply in debt, as was the fashion at the time, sold much of his territory outside the borders of what we now know as New York, including the province of New Jersey. Named in honor of the Channel Island of Jersey, Loyalist refuge that the Duke and his elder brother King Charles II took advantage of during the English Civil War, and home to George Carteret, royal ally who also helped Nicolls with the conquest of New Netherland. George Carteret owned the eastern half of New Jersey, and was joined by John Berkeley, one of King Charles's closest companions, who helped him flee from England during the Civil War. For a decade, Berkeley and Carteret co-owned the province until 1674, when problems between the two and Governor Nicolls became too much for the 72-year-old Berkeley, who sold his western holdings to Edward Byling for the sum of £1,000. Upon delivery of payment, Byling was unable to deal with this new debt and sought help from Quaker John Fenwick. The quinapartite deed would be drawn up in response, formally separating the two Jerseys along a straight line starting from the northernmost branch of said bay or river of Delaware, which is in 41 degrees and 44 minutes latitude, onto the most southwardly point of the east side of the Little Egg Harbor. John Fenwick, with financial support from William Penn, Nicholas Lucas, and Gawain Lowry, agreed to hold Byling's property in trust. Relations between the two soon broke down over who exactly owned what, with William Penn awarding Fenwick 10% of the property's value in a cash settlement to be paid by Byling. After the finalization of the sale between Berkeley and Byling, Fenwick, not trusting Byling to pay him, made plans to insure his share. In the third quarter of 1675, John Fenwick led a group of 150 Quaker settlers departing from London aboard the Griffin, arriving in the mouth of Varkin's Kill on October 8, 1675, naming their settlement Salem, derived from the Hebrew greeting meaning peace, for the delightsomeness of the land. Early surveyors considered the whole of West Jersey 100, derived from the Anglo-Saxon measurement system of 100 hides, one hide traditionally measured to be 120 acres, which the Anglo-Saxons considered the minimum needed to support a lord's household. West Jersey was divided equally into tenths. Burlington County, with its original jurisdiction over Hunterdon, Morris, Sussex, and Warren counties, resulted from the combination of the first Yorkshire and second London tenths. Fenwick's Salem tenth is today Salem County. Camden and Gloucester counties were made up from the third Irish tenth. The fourth tenth was sparsely populated until the 1680s, with the lower 6/10ths being so sparsely populated that during this period Cape May only appeared in records once with the November 25, 1685 appointment of Caleb Carman to Justice of the Peace. By 1681, around 1,400 mostly Quakers joined the first settlers, before massively increasing in the following decades, with 23,000 colonists arriving in West Jersey by 1715. While West Jersey was nominally governed by Byling, he never set foot on his property and was widely disliked by the colonists. Byling, upon his death, was succeeded by Dr. William Cox, who bought out Byling's heirs. Though Cox also never set foot on the New World, he invested in the earliest industries in the colony. East Jersey, on the other hand, was already settled by Dutch interests, and many other parties had their sights set on the region. East Jersey's first English settlers were mostly from other colonies in the New World, with the early settlers of Elizabethtown and Newark being primarily Puritans from New England, Long Island, and the West Indies. Settlements south of the Raritan River bucked this trend, with many religious outcasts from the northern colonies, namely Quakers, making up the majority of their populations. In 1680, George Carteret died and was succeeded by his cousin Philip, who had been on the ground running the colony on his cousin's behalf out of Elizabethtown from the beginning. Upon receiving the news of George's death, New York Governor Edmund Andros received orders from the Duke of York to take control of the Jerseys. Despite Edmund and Philip's good relationship, Andros ordered Carteret to hand over the colony in the name of the Duke. Philip refused, as James had no legal right to reclaim the property. Andros responded by sending soldiers to arrest Philip in his home, severely beating him in the process. The same year, Governor Andros attempted to block the Quaker settlement of Burlington and assert the Duke's ownership over West Jersey, but was unable to dislodge the Quakers. Philip Carteret was held for 2 years before being acquitted by a New York jury, despite Andros presiding over the trial. The acquittal forced James to relinquish his claims to East Jersey, although due to his treatment in Andros's custody, Philip died in 1682. The holdings passed to his widow, Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Philip had no children, and she began to sell off her inherited properties, even selling Edmund Andros the lordship of Alderney, the northernmost of the inhabited Channel Islands. Elizabeth sold East Jersey to 12 businessmen, the proprietors, 11 of whom were Quakers, one of which was William Penn himself. Another of these proprietors was the Scottish Quaker Robert Barclay of Aberdeenshire in the Scottish Lowlands. The other proprietors elected Barclay to the governorship, and though a Quaker, Barclay was more interested in transforming East Jersey into a recreation of his Scottish home in the New World, modeling his project on what William Berkeley had done previously in Virginia, recreating the dynamics of Western England in the Tidewater. This new Scottish influence is still seen today in names, most prominently the city of Perth Amboy. Settled on the area known by natives and colonists alike as Ompongi or Amboli, the settlement was named New Perth in honor of proprietor James Drummond, the Earl of Perth. Eventually, Amboyle became Ambo, which in turn became Amboy, and as that name was familiar with people before the name change, in 1683 it became tacked on to the end of Perth, thus Perth Amboy. Before 1685, about 700 Scots arrived in East Jersey, half being under indenture. Later, after the defeat of the Scottish Presbyterian Covenanters, Many captured and suspected Covenanters were deported to East Jersey as indentured servants. The legality of the indenture contracts soon came into question, as the Covenanters were never willingly indentured. With courts ruling the transported Scots were not legally bound to the contracts, and thus free. Though not as numerous as their southern neighbors, Scots still trickled into East Jersey up to and after the Revolution. Berkeley hired London lawyer and Quaker Thomas Rudyard to serve as his deputy and de facto governor, presiding over the creation of the counties of Bergen, Essex, Middlesex, and Monmouth. During this time, Rudyard had a disagreement with the proprietor's surveyor general, Samuel Groome, over the distribution of land grants. Groome planned to distribute grants based on the 1664 concessions and agreements, drawn up by Berkeley and Carteret, which limited the amount of land the proprietors could be granted. Rudyard circumvented Groome by appointing Philip Wells as deputy surveyor and selling land in the colony on the side. The proprietors replaced Rudyard with Gwaine Lowry, an English-born Scottish merchant and fellow trustee of Edward Byling. This decision followed accusations of corruption from Groome. The proprietors also avoided any properties surveyed by anyone other than Groome. Unfortunately, Lowry was of mind with Rudyard, and the two continued with Rudyard's side business. Rudyard and Gwaine Lowry's dealings were exposed when the two both received 1,000-acre properties on the Raritan Bay in Monmouth County. These grants caused outrage in the colony and led to an inquiry overseen by Andrew Hamilton. During the investigation and audit, Lowry was replaced with Lord Neil Campbell as deputy governor. Lord Campbell was only deputy governor for a few months between June and November 1686, after which Hamilton became deputy governor as well, though serving only briefly. Soon after ascending to the throne, King James faced two rebellions in England and sought to prevent the less royalistic northern colonies from rebelling as well. To this end, James formed the colonies of Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, the province of New Hampshire, the province of Maine, and the Narragansett country into the initial Dominion of New England, appointing Massachusetts-born Joseph Dudley to be its president. Dudley was so hated by his fellow New Englanders that no one would work with him, worsening colonial relations. In response to Dudley's failure, King James appointed Edmund Andros to take charge of the Dominion, and take charge he did, but this video isn't about the Dominion, just its involvement with the Jerseys. On December 29th, 1687, Andros revoked Connecticut's colonial charter, bringing the first colony outside of his original jurisdiction under the sway of his dominion. 5 months later, on May 5th, he revoked the colonial charters of New York, East and West Jersey, bringing the Dominion of New England to its full extent. This move infuriated the proprietors of both Jerseys, who petitioned to have their rights recognized, but the Dominion's sudden overthrow and subsequent chaos caused by the Glorious Revolution saw Andros's power base, King James, deposed and the Dominion dissolved. Andros was liked by the new king, William of Orange, and thus faced no consequences for his actions in the New World, with the status of the colonies largely reverting to their pre-Dominion ways. In 1692, Dr. Cox sold the colony to the West Jersey Society, a council of proprietors. The proprietors appointed Andrew Hamilton as governor of West Jersey. The proprietors of East Jersey, having been without a governor for 2 years, also elected to appoint Hamilton, making him the governor of East and West Jersey. Hamilton's tenure was not easy, having to juggle relations with natives, royal interests, and the colonists themselves. In 1698, Hamilton was deposed by former Anabaptist preacher Jeremiah Bass, who accused him of the crime of being Scottish. Bass was incompetent and soon recalled to England. Before the end of 1699, Hamilton was reappointed governor after it was ruled that the Navigation Acts of 1696 did not prohibit Scotsmen from holding office. Andrew Hamilton would be the last governor of either Jersey, as upon his death in 1703, Queen Anne united the colonies under royal charter, officially ending East and West Jersey, sort of. From 1703 until the Declaration of Independence, the province of New Jersey was still divided, having two capitals, with East Jersey's capital at Perth Amboy and West Jersey's capital at Burlington. Queen Anne appointed her cousin, the Lord Cornbury, as first governor of New Jersey, and then also governor of New York concurrently. During this time, the War of Spanish Succession spilled over into the North American colonies and the Caribbean islands as Queen Anne's War. Fans of piracy will be familiar with this. To say Edward Hyde, the 3rd Earl of Clarendon, styled the Viscount Cornbury, also known as Lord Cornbury, was controversial is an understatement. During his tenure as governor, he was responsible for the defense of the Middle Colonies, being appointed Captain General of all forces by sea and land for all colonies north of Virginia. Lord Cornbury personally oversaw the masonry refortification of Fort Frederick at Albany. With the western approach fortified, Lord Cornbury turned his attention to Fort William Henry, the current name of the fort at the end of Manhattan, in addition to fortifications on both sides of the Narrows leading into Upper New York Bay. A French ship, or rumors of a French ship, caused a panic, sending the militia of Staten Island and Queens to the fortifications on the Narrows, which they found half complete. Though the French did not come, Lord Cornbury faced accusations of corruption of the highest order, unleashing the flood of accusations that would forever tarnish his reputation. John Lovelace, 4th Baron Lovelace, would replace Lord Cornbury as governor of both New York and New Jersey. Lovelace would prosecute many members of Lord Cornbury's administration, including Jeremiah Bass, who served as 1st New Jersey Provincial Secretary under not only Cornbury, but Lovelace and the next two governors. Lovelace died May 6, 1709, after only 6 months. He was replaced by his lieutenant governor, Richard Ingoldsby, until his acting status was revoked October of 1709. Robert Hunter replaced Ingoldsby, arriving in New York City in 1710 with 3,000 displaced Palatine Germans invited to the New World by Queen Anne. Hunter led the longest administration in New Jersey since Philip Carteret. Hunter was guided by a philosophy of, the true interests of the people and government are the same, and Hunterdon County is named in his honor. Hunter was replaced with William Burnet, who governed for 8 years before resigning his post to be governor of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, accomplishing in his 6 months little more than angering the Massachusetts Assembly over his salary and dying from getting wet after a carriage accident. Burnet was replaced by John Montgomery, who was more important to New York City, which discovered under his governorship that their city actually didn't have royal assent. Montgomery was dispatched to England with approximately £1,000 earmarked officially for bribes and died in office of a seizure. Montgomery was succeeded in New Jersey, though briefly, by the New Jersey Provincial Council President Lewis Morris, who, despite being replaced with 4 governors between the years 1732 and 1737, would return in 1738 to be the first true sole governor of New Jersey. The next time New Jersey would have 2 governors would be during the Civil War that we know now as the Revolution. In 1763, William Franklin, son of founding father Benjamin Franklin, was made royal governor by Prime Minister John Stuart, 3rd Earl of Bute, in secret as a thank you to Benjamin Franklin for his work to weaken the Penn family's hold on the Middle Colonies. Despite his arrogance and temper, William governed well and was popular among the people. The breakdown between William and his father was set from the beginning. William was well liked and deeply connected to the British aristocracy, having been raised during his father's Anglophile phase. William integrated himself into what would be the American Loyalist circles, having studied law at London's Middle Temple, one of the 4 Inns of Court exclusively entitled to call their members to the English bar as barristers. These hard-won connections would lead William Franklin to oppose the growing rebel factions that included his father. After Benjamin Franklin was thoroughly derided and humiliated by Solicitor General Alexander Wedderburn before the Privy Council on January 29, 1774, Benjamin expected William to resign in protest. Instead, William advised his father to take his medicine and retire from office, presumably thinking his father had grown too old for politics. On January 13, 1775, in the wake of Lexington and Concord and the siege of Boston earlier that year, Franklin delivered his Two Roads speech to the New Jersey legislature, urging the members to take the road towards prosperity as a part of England rather than the road to war. Franklin had failed to persuade the legislature, who would vote unanimously to support the rebels. Earlier that year, in the immediate aftermath of the events in Massachusetts, the Provincial Congress of New Jersey was founded to supersede Franklin's authority. As Franklin refused to join them in August of 1776, the legislature elected William Livingston as first governor of an independent New Jersey. Franklin would remain royal governor until his arrest that January. After being held in Connecticut for 8 months, Franklin would be exchanged by the Patriots. After this exchange, William joined the British occupying New York, assembling an outlaw band under John Bacon, leader of the Pine Robbers, to harass Patriot activities in New Jersey. Franklin's group would gain infamy skirmishing with local Patriot militia in the last documented conflict of the American Revolutionary War in December of 1782. Similarly, William Livingston spent the first part of his governorship in hiding with his family in Parsippany, his home in Elizabeth, the frequent target of British soldiers and Loyalist bounty hunters looking to capture the rebel leader. William hailed from the wealthy Livingston family of New York and was instrumental in maintaining New Jersey's economy during the chaos of the war. Livingston was elected governor every year from 1776 to 1789, dying in office July 25, 1790, the first governor of the first united New Jersey. The Revolutionary War was the height of New Jersey's dividedness. Even during the later Civil War, New Jerseyans had their opinions, even going so far as to be the only northern state to vote against Lincoln in the 1864 election. But there were no battles in New Jersey. Today, New Jersey is divided: urban versus rural, Republican versus Democrat, Giants versus Eagles. Tomorrow, New Jersey may be divided in new and more interesting ways, but so long as we remember how bad we used to be divided, we may just be able to avoid adding another 10 minutes to this video.